Hi, and welcome to the second video in our File Monitor GUI with PowerShell tutorial series. This is where we take our File Monitor script that we've created with a console application the last couple videos on the channel, and we actually make a GUI application for it. So the first video is where we really built our XAML file, which is using Visual Studio 2022 to really just place all the elements that we want on our GUI. And then we take that file and we actually created a little PowerShell script to use that file to generate our GUI and create our variables. So that's actually where we ended off the video last time. So if we run the script that we have right now, we will actually see we do get a window. We have all of our buttons. They don't do anything. We have our list box and we have our labels here, but they don't do anything. So that's what we're going to be working on this video. So if you've missed that video, please go back and check that out to build the form. If you've already seen a lot of the other GUI videos and you already kind of have a hand on creating them, you can definitely use it as a challenge to build your own GUI form. And then you can watch this video to see how to create the actions for those buttons. Or if you wanted to even do it completely on yourself and then see maybe my solution, see how it differs from yours. This is just one of the solutions to a file monitor GUI. There are a bunch of other features that you can add and a bunch of different ways to actually do this. But let's go ahead and let's actually get started in coding these different buttons here. So we have a bunch of different buttons to code, and I would actually start off typically with probably the load baseline button. I just think that kind of makes sense. It would either be that or the create baseline, one or the other. But we're going to start with load baseline in our case here. So we know that for us, the button for the load baseline is cleverly named var underscore btn load baseline. We get all of these variables again from that last video with the get dash variable var underscore star command. It outputs all the variables that we've created. We create a variable for each object that we've put on our GUI. So the first thing we're going to do is actually reference that here. So we're going to do var underscore, and we're going to select btn load baseline. And we are going to do a dot notation on there. And we are going to do a add underscore click here. So we're going to do a add underscore click. And then we're going to do an open parentheses and a open curly brackets and just hit enter in there. And this is where we are actually going to put in our code. So this is when we're going to click on that load baseline button, and it's going to load the baseline into the list box. So that is our main goal here. So what I would first want to do is just make sure that that list box is empty. We want to make sure that we don't have any duplicates in there. So let's go ahead and let's reference our list box, which is going to be var underscore lst path. And we're going to do dot items dot clear. And that will actually clear out all the items. By default, it will be empty. But if we load a baseline and we load a second baseline, we want to make sure that we clear out those items in there. And then what we also want to do is actually open up that open file dialog that we've seen in our console application in the last video to give the user the option to select a file. And we, of course, want to limit that to only a CSV file. So we want to make sure that we do that as well. So let's go ahead and let's create that here. So we're going to do a input file pick is equal to a new object, and our new object is going to be a system dot windows dot forms dot open file dialog. And now we're going to put that filter on there. So we're going to have our input file pick dot filter. And now we want to limit it to CSV files. So we're going to do a double quote here, capital CSV space parentheses star.csv, and space after the parentheses, and then a pipe star.csv. And then we're going to go ahead and we are going to show our dialog for the input file pick. So that's just input file pick dot show dialog. And then we are going to set our variable of baseline file path to the input file pick dot file name. Now, what we can do, we can definitely add tests in here to make sure that it is proper. But because we are limiting it to only CSV files, it is pretty safe. But we can definitely always assume the worst. Maybe someone knows a trick on how to break that open file dialog to let us pick other files. So we can definitely add tests here. Let's just add a test and make sure that we actually do that here. So let's just do an if, and we're just going to add a test path. So it's actually going to test the path as well that we've given to it. So it's going to test the path for baseline file path, open and close curly brackets. And we're going to do another if here. If the baseline file path dot substring baseline file path dot length -4, and we're checking for the length of 4, so that's going to grab the dot CSV, and we want to say if, so we're going to have to add another parentheses at the front here, if this is equal to dot CSV, then we're going to do an open and closing curly bracket. We are going to then do we're going to put the path in our label here. So our var lbl baseline dot content is going to equal the baseline file path. And then we're going to do an else. We're going to do a var lbl baseline. We are just going to actually put this as a invalid file, needs to be a CSV file. All right, and we are just going to have to once again close that up here. So that should be good. That will give us our label will actually be loaded. It won't load any of the elements in there. What I'm actually going to do to load the elements, so actually if we just run this as is right now to show you guys what happens. When we click load baseline, we're going to get our open file dialog. If we select our baseline, we do get our path that shows up here, but we don't have any items. We haven't loaded the actual items in the baseline. All we've done is now set this label to show us that we have selected that baseline. What I'm actually going to do is I'm going to create a function. Now you can do this function in a commandlet fashion or just creating it as an actual function, which is what I'm going to do since I don't need it to be a commandlet. We're just going to do a function load baseline. We're still going to name it kind of like a commandlet here. So we're going to have a function load baseline. And all we're going to do is a baseline file path equals the var equals our label here. So it grabs the file path from the label dot content, and then the baseline contents will be a import -csv, and we're going to put the path as the baseline file path. We're going to put the delimiter as a comma here. Now again, maybe you could give that as an option to the user to pick what kind of delimiter they have on their file monitor files, like on their baselines, but we are just making it a comma here. And then we are doing a for each file in baseline contents. So now we're iterating through the contents of that baseline. and we are going to select our var underscore lst path. So we're selecting that list box, and we're going to do dot items dot add, and we are adding, we're going to do a set of double quotes here. Now you don't actually need these double quotes, but maybe you want to make it a little bit more less generic. So all we're doing is our file.path, but you can actually add some more details in here. For me, I'm just putting this file path in there. And then at the bottom here in our load baseline button, after we've put in the baseline file path into the label, all we're going to do is call the load baseline. So now if we save that, we go ahead and we run that, we go load baseline, select our baseline, and there is all of our entries here. So as you can see, we can select a bunch of them. But right now, if we do verify baseline, add path, or new baseline, it does not work, but we can actually go ahead and we can actually load other baseline files, and it actually refreshes here. So it doesn't just keep adding them to the list box. That is why we clear that list box every time to make sure that we don't just keep adding to it. So once we have the baseline loaded, the other options are we can check it or we can actually add a path to it. So what I'm actually going to do is I'm just going to give the option to check it right away. The button for the adding paths is probably going to be the longest button to code in this video. So let's just go ahead and let's do a var underscore btn check files. Once again, we're going to do a add underscore click and open parentheses, open curly brackets. And all we're going to do here is actually clear out our list box, which might seem kind of odd, but it will all make sense in just a few seconds here. Once we clear our list box, what we're actually going to be doing is using that list box to display the result of our verify. Now, of course, you can do the verify with the email. I'm just going to be doing a very basic verify where it just gives us the output directly on the window here. So once again, we're going to do a baseline file path is equal to the label here, dot content. And that's it. And then we're going to go ahead and we are going to once again create a baseline contents. And we're going to make that equal to the import-csv path, and then the baseline file path, and then the delimiter. Now, of course, you can probably notice that we might be able to even refactor this code definitely afterwards. But in these GUIs, I'm not usually too concerned because it is usually just someone that's going to be executing the GUI, not actually manipulating the code as much. So this usually works out fine. So once we've actually imported all the baseline contents, what we're going to be doing, very similar to how we did it directly in the console, we are going to be verifying each one. So we're going to do a for each file in baseline contents, open and close curly brackets. So we're going to make sure that the path is actually still there. So we're going to do a test path of file.path. And we're going to do an open and close curly brackets. And then right away, we're going to have our else here. We're going to do the else right away. So if the file is not found, we're going to go into the list box. We're going to add an item. Items.add. And what we're actually going to add in here is, once again, just the double quotes with a variable wrapper of file path. And we are going to say is not found. Exclamation mark. All right. And then what we just need to do now is if the file path actually does exist, does the hash actually match? So let's do a current hash variable is going to be equal to get file hash for the path of file.path. And then if current hash equals file.hash, and then we're going to have an else here. So we're going to do the else right away. So if the hashes don't match, we're once again going to add an item here. So items.add. And we are going to add, once again, double quotes and a variable wrapper. File.path has changed. And if they have not changed, we're just going to copy paste this line here. Has not changed. Okay, perfect. So that should be all good here once we actually click on check files or the verify baseline button. Let's go ahead and let's save that here. And let's run this code again. Let's load the baseline. Let's load our baseline here. So we have our 4 files. If we click on verify, we actually see that all of them have actually changed. So we can actually then go ahead and add a path in the next one. Once we add the add path button, we're going to see that they actually have not all changed here. So let's go ahead and add the button for the add path here. So we're going to go ahead and put our var and then btn add path dot add underscore click, open and close parentheses, open and close curly brackets. And let's go ahead and add the baseline. So what I'm actually going to do when I add the path to the baseline, because we're going to be adding it to the current baseline, what I also want to do is I want to refresh that list box of paths to show that the new item was added. So what we're actually going to go ahead and do is we are going to clear out that list box once again. So let's just go ahead and clear the LST path. So items dot clear. And let's go ahead and let's give the option to the user to pick the file that they want to add. So we're going to have an input file pick. And we're going to do a new dash object system dot windows dot forms dot open file dialog. We're going to do input file pick dot show dialog. And we're going to do a baseline file path is going to be equal to our var lbl baseline dot content, because we want to store it in our selected baseline. And then we are going to do a target file path is then going to be equal to our input file pick dot file name. And then the current baseline is going to be equal to import dash CSV. So here we are importing the current baseline, and we are going to detect if that file path already exists. If it does, we are automatically going to overwrite it in this case. So let's go ahead and let's do that. So let's do our path, and we're going to specify the baseline file path. The delimiter, as always, is just going to be a comma. And let's go ahead and let's say if the target file path is in the current baseline dot path, we are going to go ahead and basically re-export the current baseline without that item. So what we're going to do is we're going to do a current baseline. It's going to be outputted to where object path not equal to target file path. And we're going to export CSV. And the path for that is going to be the baseline file path. The delimiter is going to be the same delimiter. And we're going to put a no type information on that. And then we're going to go ahead and we're going to do a hash is equal to the get file hash of the path of the target file path. So now we're getting the new hash of that file. So we've removed it from the current baseline if it's in there. We're getting the hash, and then all we're actually going to do is pump that into the CSV here. So we're going to do a variable wrapper. We're going to do a target file path, and then a comma, and then another variable wrapper with the hash dot hash, and we are going to pipe that to the out file path, baseline file path, and we are going to append that to it. Now, if the file is not in that file, so else, all we need to do is get the hash and append it to the baseline here. And then all we want to do, as we've seen in our console application, we just want to standardize that baseline because some of them will have double quotes, some of them will not. So all we need to do here is actually do a re-import of current baseline. So import CSV path baseline file path delimiter. And then all we're going to do is actually take that current baseline, pipe that to export-csv all over again, give it the path of the baseline file path, give it the delimiter and the no type information. And then the only thing that we need to do now is run the load baseline, which will actually go ahead and reload all of those entries. So if we actually go ahead and save that and run that now, we can load the baseline. We can load baseline 1. And let's actually verify the baseline so we can see that test 1 has changed. So if I actually add a path and we go and add our first file again here, so test 1, there it is. Now it's at the bottom, so it actually overwrote it. So the first one is not there anymore. And now if we click verify baseline, we can actually still see that it actually shows changed. So something is actually not working in our code here. Oh, actually, it might actually be working. I just did not actually notice that here. Give me 1 second. Let's actually just rerun this baseline here, verify. Yeah, okay, so has changed. So something is not working. So if the current hash is equal to the file hash, so that should actually be working here. Let me just take a quick look and we're just going to fix this up real quick. All right, so actually the main part that we forgot is we were getting the hash, but we have not actually specified current hash dot hash equals the file hash. So when we were doing our checking our files here, we were checking if the path exists, we were getting the current hash. And when we were doing the comparison between the two hashes, we actually do need to specify the dot hash on the current hash. You guys probably caught that before I did. So let's go ahead and let's test that out here and see if that works. So if we do a load baseline here, let's load the baseline 1, verify baseline. So here we can actually see some files that have not actually changed. So if we actually go ahead and we change this file here, this file monitor GUI files test 1 has not changed. So if we actually go in here, we put 9 or 0 in there, we save it. And then we go ahead and we verify the baseline. We can see that it has now changed. So everything is actually working as expected. Just a little typo in the reference of current hash here when comparing it to the CSV hash. So now we're able to add files. So now if we actually just go ahead, we test that once again, we load our baseline, we can add a path here. So let's add 4. So we can actually see we got 4. It is a full different file path because this one is in File Monitor GUI and this one is just in Basic File Monitor. So they are all there. And we can actually see that when we check it, it has not actually changed. So that works. So the only thing that we need to actually add functionality for is a new baseline. So let's go ahead and let's create that functionality here. And let's do a $var underscore and create baseline dot add underscore click, open and close parentheses, open and close curly brackets. And the only thing that we need to do in this case is really create that baseline. Now it is completely up to you if you actually want to create a baseline and then automatically load that as the selected baseline. I would say that probably makes sense. So let's go ahead and let's make it with that functionality. So what we're first going to want to do, of course, is clear out our list box. So let's do items dot clear. And then we need to pop up a file dialog. Now, as we know, we need to pop up a slightly different file dialog. We need to pop up a save file dialog. So let's do it input file pick dot is going to be equal to a new object. It's going to be system dot windows dot forms dot save file dialog. And we want to give it once again a filter to limit to only get to be saved as a CSV file. So that our filter is just going to be all uppercase CSV space, open parentheses, star.csv, close parentheses, space, pipe, space, star.csv. And then our input file pick dot show dialog to pop that up here. And let's go ahead and let's do a baseline file path is equal to input file pick dot file name. And then all we need to do is actually load in the first item in here. And we're just going to put path hash, and we're going to pipe that to out file path, baseline file path, and we are going to force that. So it's just going to overwrite there. So that should be good. And then all we need to do is actually put that into the current selected baseline. So what we're going to do is we're going to do a var lbl baseline dot content equals baseline file path. And then we're going to do a load baseline. So we're just going to check to see if this works. So here we have it. Let's go ahead. Let's create a new baseline. We're going to create right it in here. We're going to name it test YouTube 1. There it is. Our CSV file is there. Let's add a path. Let's add our test 1 file. Let's add our test 2, test 3, and test 4. And we can actually verify none of them have changed. And if we go ahead and we actually just go ahead and we change one here and we verify it once again, we can actually see that the test 1 has actually changed now, which is the one that we changed. So everything is working correctly. If we go into our files here, we can see that the baseline is actually loaded correctly. So everything is actually working in our GUI. So now you guys do have a GUI version of the file monitor script. Now this one does not have the email ability, but you can easily add that in with another text box that prompts you for the email that you want it sent to. Maybe you have to prompt for that SMTP unless you have a service email that you just want to use all the time, just going to use that all the time. And the only option that the user has is to put a to field in there. So these are all some different options that you can add in. You can add the email option. You can add in a bunch of other different features that you want to add in here. This is just a very basic version of a file monitor with a GUI. If you guys have any comments or questions on this video, please let me know in the comment section down below. If you guys would like to see a specific application built with a GUI with PowerShell, please let me know in the comment section down below as well. And be sure to hit that subscribe button, hit that like button, also hit that notification bell to be notified when that next video comes out. And I will see you guys on the next video.